He won't be here tonight. I told him that's fine.
We're ready to go. Thank you.
All right, Kellen, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, for those in person and online. Welcome to the City of River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, February 21st, 2022. Could we have a roll call, please?
Garrell,
Present.
Morissette,
Here.
Spafford,
Here.
Toom,
Here.
Westpatel,
Here.
Wells Mangold.
Here. Okay, so moving on, looking for an approval of the minutes from the UAB meeting on January 18th.
I move approval. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. At this time, we welcome any public comments. So if anyone has any, please come to the podium. If there's any public comments, this is the appropriate time to do that. Please approach the podium. Going once, going twice. All right. Next item, looking to move to the consent agenda. Acknowledgement of the meetings from West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission from November 18th, December 1st, December 16th, and January 20th. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved consent agenda approval. Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? I can't tell if Mark is saying. Okay. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to reports. So tonight we have, Kevin, it looks like first item up is the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Preview and Update Report.
Thank you, Chairperson Mangold. Kevin Westhouse, Utility Director tonight. Going to do a little presentation. Some of you may have seen this before. I've freshened it up a bit. Let me get to here. Let me go here. We did this last fall, and we've done this a few times over the last couple of years, as we have a very big decision ahead of us in whether or not we continue our relationship with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids, or we elect to take care of our final solids here locally ourselves. We did ask for a contract decision extension with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids, and they gave us, I think, until the end of June this year to make a decision. On March 8th, we're having a joint workshop between the Utility Advisory Board and City Council. And I was thinking over the last week that it's probably not even fair to you just to bring you into that at the last minute and throw this at you with a fire hose. So we're going to just get this back on your mind, get some material in front of you. That'll give you a couple of weeks to ponder it and give you some time to come up with questions, thoughts, ideas, concerns. So I think I have maybe, a 10, 12-page slide presentation here. I want to kind of go through this project, and then I'll be here for questions or comments or dialogue around West Central Wisconsin Biosolids. So we did a study with Trilogy Consulting, and when we get to the March 8th, Trilogy is going to be here to explain the numbers in detail. Strand Consulting will also be here to talk about the potential for doing, there you go, thank you. I like that. I like that a lot. I like that. So Strand Consulting will also be here too to answer detailed questions about what a plant in our facility would look like, or what a dryer in our facility would look like. So it'll be much more in depth. I'm just going to kind of give you the overview. So the study here was to evaluate the financial impacts of our sewer utility and its customers of two alternative options. So again, the options are we do it ourselves or we stay with West Central Biosolids. So we considered a lot of impacts, and we're still considering impacts. I'm starting to develop a pros and cons list as well. You all have this in front of you too, don't you? Yeah. Good, thank you. So we issue impacts to consider: issuing debt to finance improvements to our facility, our cash flow analysis, reserve levels, rates, of course, is always a big consideration. We look at the impacts in the context of utilities' overall level of debt and other capital improvements. What else is coming up? What other big projects do we have? Can we afford this now? What debt is going to be expired by the time we get to 2025? And then we looked at the net present value of the costs for each alternative over the next 20 years. And I'm also understanding from West Central Biosolids, it might be an 18-year deal with West Central because of the way the contracts line up. But we're going to stick with 20 years for right now. 18 will make it probably worse for West Central. This chart here, without getting into the detail, you can see our costs have been increasing at West Central Wisconsin Biosolids for all kinds of reasons. You've got equipment, labor, materials, things go up. River Falls' share of West Central Biosolids is also increasing. So we're over 18%. Creeping up on 19% now, share of the West Central Biosolids expenses. So, you could round up and go over 20% of it if you just want to talk rough.
So Kevin, is that just because our output is increased?
Yes.
It's basically the same other communities that are involved with it.
Correct. So
Okay.
the slight increase is due to, Tim, more load, right? We have more pounds in this build on, we have the trucking cost, but then that's a cost, but then it's based, your end invoice is also based on pounds of solid. So when the pounds go up, we get a higher bill.
Well, and it's kind of a double whammy with the transportation change that the DOT imposed, so
Yeah, there's that
we can't carry as much of a load
in the spring.
in the spring, so
More trips.
we've got to make more trips,
Trips.
which increases our transportation.
As well. So I might get into it, but now that you mentioned that, so somebody would ask, well, how much is our transportation cost? I think in 2020, we were about $130,000 we spent on transporting our product to Ellsworth.
Kevin, so thinking of the output of River Falls versus our neighbors and things like that, is this related to the number of residents we have too? So like as our population grows?
Yes.
Okay. Is the data showing that their populations are decreasing by chance, or is there?
No, I think we're just growing a little faster maybe.
Okay.
So somehow we're getting a little bit, if you look at that top graph here, I mean, that isn't like a steep line, but we've went from 17.5% to 18.5%. So,
well, in all the other communities, are they decreasing or increasing in population?
I would say New Richmond, Hudson are also probably increasing. Some may be decreasing, maybe a Baldwin. Or
just wondering how that compares to us if we're going to continue to be the largest, if that share grows even more compared to everybody else.
Right. So I don't know. There might be some communities shrinking, but the ones around us aren't. Hudson and New Richmond are the next two biggest in line. So if you look at Hudson, New Richmond, River Falls, we're almost half of their load.
Okay.
And I think I recall in one of the West Central minutes that a small community or incorporation, whatever, asked to bring product as a non-member, but they were turned down. Is that because of capacity or?
I think it was a contractual thing. So I think Mondovi is working with West Central right now. They want a short-term contract, but we've only been doing 15-year contracts for non-members. So there's going to be a little bit of a debate whether or not you want to allow somebody in for a short-term contract as well. So some of it is contractual. Maybe that's why that's going on.
But not to derail your presentation here,
Yeah,
Kevin, I
please.
apologize, but don't they also have capacity issues in the current facility? That's part of the reason why they're talking about a new facility.
Yes.
I know that their drying facility is,
Yes.
you described it to me and I was really I was shocked.
I have a picture of it coming up here. I added a
Oh,
picture of the
okay.
presentation.
That's why we should be quiet now.
No, but that's good. But the last meeting, that Randy Lindquist, who also invited to our March 8th meeting from West Central, I think is good if he's there. I think he wants to come. He was just belaboring the point. They're getting close to 100% capacity on some of their equipment and machinery right now. So, and they're looking into the future, and they see these trend lines, and they're going, we need to upgrade. We need to retrofit.
Yeah.
That's why the projects.
Yeah.
It's really out of necessity. There's our charges. We're over $400,000 a year now over West Central Biosolids between hauling and the paying for the pounds. So roughly 430,000, I think we were last year. So alternative one is for us to produce a Class A biosolids at the River Falls facility. The utility would issue debt and we construct a biosolids handling facility in 2025. They're to be operational by the end of 2025 when the contract expires. This says 2026. I think it's the end of 2025. So we'd have to get on that. If we move ahead and we decide to do that in the next couple months, we'll probably start hiring engineers and planning yet in 2022, with construction starting in late 23, so we can make sure this is done by the time our contract expires at the end of 25. So operation and maintenance costs substantially decrease in 2026. That's accurate because the O&M for the new facilities would be less than the current payments to West Central. Utility will have debt service payments on the new facility starting 2026. We're talking about a $7.2 million facility. That's a negative. I mean, it's a lot of cash outlay up front. Annual debt service, though, $462,000, which again, there's your delta, right? I mean, that and the O&M of 172 is less than a cost of 634 is going to be less than we're going to be paying to West Central. At about roughly 150,000 a year, give or take, less. Cash needs, there it is. There's the cash needs you see in 2025, 2026. It's the cash outlay that is probably the biggest thing where we'd have to use some of our cash and then bond for the rest. I'll just say here's some good news there, though. We have two loans that are expiring. One is in 2023 and one is in 2025. So we are going to have some cash freed up. In talking to Josh Solinger, our finance director, that will help our position. That we have two big loans that are expiring. We would then be rebonding for this bigger project. The next page, it shows the reserve line, and somebody would say, well, geez, that's a lot of reserves right now. You're at $2,300,000. You're going to be bumping down to 1.4. Isn't that still good enough? Here's the deal with reserves. We like to have 90 days of cash on hand, which is about $850,000. You say, well, why are your reserves so high? Reserve limits are directly related to your lending requirements. So we have a clean water fund right now, and they require a certain level of reserve. And I think if other loans and other bonds would require some higher level of reserve money, and I know Christine from Trilogy, she'll refer to that a little bit more. But you say, well, why the higher reserve than you typically would have? It has to do with your lending requirements, and that it differs. So that line doesn't look terrible, actually. You look at that and go, would we need a rate increase? One could argue if you could live a little lower reserve, maybe not until maybe 2030 to level that out a little bit.
Kevin,
Yes.
I told you, I promised I wasn't going to interrupt. But
No, please do. I want this
So,
dialogue.
One of the things that I think we should be cognizant of, both here and at the council, is sewer is not a PSC regulated
Non-regulated entity.
So we don't have a watchdog looking over our shoulder like we do with water and electric,
Correct.
saying, yes, your rate case makes sense, or no, it doesn't. So I guess what I'm saying is it falls on us as the advisory board and as the council to really make sure that we are extra judicious in our decision making here when it comes to raising this, because there's nobody behind us saying yes or no.
Correct.
This is all on us.
Correct.
So that's a point I guess I'd like everybody to keep in mind.
I always feel confident to that point, Scott. I always feel confident, even with water and electric, when we're recommending rate cases to the PSC, I'm always confident in what we're presenting, that everybody here and at the council level is bought into that and is going to stand behind it. But this is even more so because there's no one to blame. It's going to be on us and the policymakers decide where we go with our lending, with our borrowing limits. So that's why I put that one up. I'll have one for alternative 2 too, so you'll, in your packets, you can kind of go back and forth on this. Alternate 2, this renew the contract with West Central. Here's they really had, this is broken down into 3 projects, and I'm going to go into those in the next couple slides to show you. It's $29 million that they need to spend over the next 8 years in order to get their facility up to where they want to go. That first bullet point, the $2.3 million in 2022, that's not going to happen in 2022 because it hasn't started yet. It'll probably get bid out and maybe start construction in late 22 and completed in 23. You see that net $1.6 million grant? That was a line item in the federal budget, but the problem is federal budget never passed. They went with a continuing resolution, so West Central Wisconsin Biosolids is not going to get the $1.6 million. So they have to go that alone because they did a CR on that continuing resolution, no budget. So everything that we lobbied for, that we worked hard to get into that budget, trust me, it wasn't easy. And Scott Simpson and others did a lot of work behind the scenes in order to make that happen, and didn't happen. So, and I think that project's probably up to $2.6 million now with inflation. So that project there, though, will be paid for about $1 million out of the reserves from West Central, and the rest to be blended into the rates. So that'll be blended. So we'll feel that on a rate impact. I guess if we get out in end of 25, though, we're only going to be paying for that a couple of years, and then the price will go up for everybody else. So then the big project is a $21.6 million project in 2025, and I know West Central Biosolids is lobbying to blend the $5.1 million project with the $21.6 million project as well, but for a total of $29 million. I won't get into the detailed numbers of that, just give you a flavor. So here's West Central Wisconsin Biosolids. So that actually exists. It's a building. On the left side of the picture on the left, you can see where the trucks drive in. There's a scale in there, and there's unloading. It's just the front side of the building. And then Scott was alluding to the storage. There's your storage building. That's just piled in there all the way through most of the year. And then once a year, a farmer comes and gets that and spreads it on their land. There's always the worry that the farmer is just going to decide not to come and get it. And we don't have a backup plan, but it's strong smelling, a lot of ammonia smell in there. You kind of gasp when you walk in that building. But there it is, and the guy comes and hauls it out and takes it away, and we don't charge him. And I think actually we pay him like a few $100s to take it. So that's the storage. It's pretty raw and kind of stinky. So here's the projects by phase. You saw we're talking about the 3 projects for West Central. Phase .05 is the first one. It's a receiving garage. It's a new building constructed to the east of the building and the tanks. It would house new scales, screeners, and construction to include installation of new piping to the existing tank, along with stubbing in new piping to the future tank. Also include an upgrade to the HVAC, odor control, and the current garage and office area. So that's the project that is going to happen. Last fall at the membership meeting, the members voted to go ahead with this project. This is the one that'll be about, I think, $2.6 million now. It says 2.3 on there, but the last meeting is said expect a little bit more.
And Kevin, we're in on that one because we're in until 25, so we're
correct.
part of that project.
We're going to be part of that project.
Or not.
If it's blended into the rates, we'll be paying for it for a couple of years. So yeah, until we leave, and then the other people's rates are going to have to go up to cover the difference. So yes, we're going to be in on that one. When the rates go up in 23 to pay for the project, we will pay until we get out, if that's the way we want to go with it. Phase 1 is we're getting bigger projects, $21 million project, convert the current centrate storage tanks into sludge storage tanks, construct new centrate storage tanks, chemical feed, ferric chloride, polymer, I don't know, all kinds of stuff that needs to get up to code and new in their main building. New sludge dryer or other process to determine to be most beneficial. They might go with a similar dryer that we're talking about doing. HVAC and processing areas, evaluate odor control. That's $21 million to do all that. That's phase 1. And then phase 2, they said maybe 2030. I know they're pushing to do it earlier. Earlier do it, cheaper it's going to be. Higher capacity centrifuges. So centrifuge, well, all it does is they take our product and products from all the cities, and they run it through a centrifuge and squeezes all the water out of it, basically. then we get a lot of the water called centrate comes back to our plant. So we ship it out, and then they ship it back after they get the solids out of it, when they put it through the centrifuge.
So Kevin, do we get a proportionate amount back, or do we get,
It's a portion.
I mean,
It's not pound for pound,
okay.
but yeah, it's,
So we could be getting, for instance, like Clear Lake, because it's just too far to ship it.
so actually, yeah, it's a mismatch. So to your point there, I'm making my pros and cons list. I think it's a con to get everybody's mixed in together. Here's the con. So there's this thing of PFAS. I don't know if you've heard of PFAS.
Oh, yeah.
We will be having to test for PFAS in our effluent that goes into the river at some point, not yet. But if we're taking 20 other communities centrate back, it's going to go into our system.
That's where my
So it's
question
not
was
going to be just us. So that is problematic, could potentially be problematic in the future. So
Yeah.
we will be taking everybody's centrate. It's all mixed together. Somebody asked Dean, who's there? Dean, how much, the centrate trucks, how much do we get back compared to what we deliver?
It's gallon for gallon.
It is gallon for gallon, so I thought it was close, so yeah.
But it isn't necessarily our gallon.
No, not our gallon. Our gallon leaves, we take all of it back from everywhere that's mixed together.
For the transportation costs that you were talking about, bringing it back, is that also factored into that cost?
It's blended in, correct. It's blended in to the total transportation cost. Yeah, so there's
Kevin,
two-way.
Quick question, Kevin, from
So-
Mark Spafford.
Oh, there's a question. Mark, I couldn't hear.
What is the gallon per gallon? What are you saying? Don't they centrifuge our waste and send back what we're supposed to have? Or are you saying it's just split amongst all the owners?
So if we ship out 300 gallons, that's not the right number, but we get back 300, is that what you're saying, Dean? Yes.
And it's just a random, just whoever is in the tank.
Yeah, and he said it's random who's ever in the tank. So I know what you're saying, Mark. It doesn't seem logical that they would take some off and then we would get the same amount back, but that's how it works. Because not everybody takes back, not everybody's taking back the centrate. So that's why you get gallon for gallon.
Okay.
So, yeah, that could be problematic. So there's phase 2 of the project. So I just wanted to show you what the different phases were. I say phases, and you're like, well, what is in those phases? That's all why I wanted to show you that. Here's alternative 2 project cash needs. Yeah, and you can see the big one in 25, 26. The one in 22 is the one we're talking about now. There's less cash outlay in alternative 2 because it's spread out amongst more communities. But the cost is still higher over long periods of time. This chart here is the one I want you to put against the alternative 1 chart. And the one that is more concerning here is you look at the total reserve line and how that really starts bending down after the big project starts in 2026, and the amount of money that how our costs go up. I think you say, how complicated is this decision? I don't know if we're overcomplicating it or not, because if you put this chart next to the other chart, it seems like one could argue it's a pretty simple decision, but there's much more that goes into the decision, but this one tells a lot when you compare those two side by side, in my opinion. If you're looking purely at financials, you're looking out for the best financial interest of our facility with nothing else in the mix to influence your decision, you go, well, financially, this is better to go with alternative 1. But there's probably other reasons. So anyway, that's why I put that one in there. Here's the findings. Alternative 1 requires utility to issue significantly more debt than the other alternatives. I said that. This could temporarily increase the ratio of outstanding debt to operating revenues. It also recommended reserve levels are approximately $300,000 higher in alternative 2 due to the increased annual debt service. Assuming no sewer user charge rate increase, alternative 1 is projected to decrease utility cash reserves to about 1.8 million through 2030, then maintain about 1.8. You saw that in the alternative 1 graph, how that reserve line kind of straightened out a little bit, where in alternative 2 it dove down. And the sewer rate increase may be needed to provide adequate debt coverage, possibly. The debt coverage would have to be decided when we do our bonding, whatever the bonding agency would require. But
Can I ask a question? It's
Yes.
kind of down in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah,
Maybe
go.
this is a better one for Josh, but
Go.
so the utility policy is 1.25 for the debt service?
90 days cash on hand.
So it's 90 days cash on hand.
Yeah, that's, yeah, please, go.
Because normally I'm used to a 120 and I'm seeing 150. Is that our policy or is that a bonding requirement, Josh, or what is that?
So we've got two policies that we're keeping an eye on for our enterprise funds. Working capital requirement is 90 days.
Sure.
Cash on hand. And then there is kind of a debt coverage requirement, which
Yep.
is our operating revenues should be 1.5 times higher than our
Or debt.
that year's debt service.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are the two that we're looking out for.
And that's our internal?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, but the bonding agencies are okay with $1.20, aren't they?
Yeah, and I don't off the top of my head, I don't have those in front of me or ready to speak to. I could certainly provide you with kind of what Moody's tends to look for.
Okay.
Ellers, who is our financial
Yep,
advisor,
yep.
they've got some metrics that they kind of advise us on.
Sure.
Obviously, they don't apply to our internal policies, but they help inform perhaps what the rating agencies are looking for in terms of debt coverage and things of that nature. And we do have access to that information. I've got it. I just don't have
No,
it.
I'm putting you on the spot. I apologize, but what I'm driving at is, are we overburdening ourselves to create reserves that may or may not be needed by keeping a higher debt service because that's what we want to have? And can we still meet bonding obligations if we lower that? Even if we say, okay, let's compromise. Well, let's take it down to 130 instead of 120, which is still, I think, a little rich. But we're not at the 150. So I guess that's what I'm driving at is, if we're going to burden ourselves in this chart to maintain debt service at 150, we may be overdoing it a little
Right.
bit.
It's-
Food for thought.
And one other thing that, again, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have the calculation, but when Kevin was referencing reserve requirements that are kind of imposed on us by, I guess, the lending agencies, one of the things that's kind of encapsulated there is the Clean Water Fund loan. So they require us to hold a certain amount of restricted cash.
Okay.
That isn't tied to our debt service payments. It's actually tied to the equipment that we used the debt to finance the acquisition of.
Okay.
And so again, there's a calculation for that
Yep.
that's tied to the asset, and
Yeah.
we're required to keep that cash on hand. So part of the restriction that Kevin referred to includes that number.
Okay. God, those finance people are just a pain, aren't
I mean, I can't say I love it, but we have to keep track
they?
of it.
No, I know.
And when Josh is up here, so Josh and I started our conversation, about this very thing last week. And we're going to be meeting with Christine from Trilogy early next week to fine tune the numbers. And I think the numbers are close right now. They're not going to change drastically at all, but we might have found a few things. We're only getting Christine is only inputting what we've given her. And Josh is just going through everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure what we're
Sure.
giving her is the correct numbers. And we've made the right assumptions on our capital improvement project moving forward and all of that. So we're going to be going through that with a fine-tooth comb next week.
Good. Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Kevin.
So yeah, overall, that last alternative two, it's about $3.2 million more in net present value than alternative one. And if you divide that by 20 years, it's roughly 150,000 plus a year. So.
Kevin, if we sign the
back to numbers.
contract,
Mark, go ahead. I can barely hear you.
if we sign the contract for alternative 2, how many years does that lock us in again?
That's a 20-year contract till 2045.
Thank you.
Yes. So, and the last bullet point is kind of what we were belaboring. In the conclusion, alternative 2 is less cost-effective than alternative 1, resulting in the need to examine and potentially increase sewer rates, potentially, again, depending on where you want your limits on reserves and whatnot. Alternative 2 could have a higher O&M cost for River Falls than shown in this report if West Central O&M expenses rise faster than the 2% per year, or if the share of cost charged to River Falls continues to increase. You know, right now, there's a gas price rider. If it goes over $2.90 a gallon, there's a little increase bump on that right now for transportation. So there are things that are going to be out of our control: inflation, gas costs, transportation. You're going to have some of that locally as well, but I think we try to highlight some of that there.
Kevin, one of the things that we were talking about was the added cost of the trucks driving on the roads and then needing to repair the roads and everything else associated with the project. Is all of that factored into this?
It's not, and we talked about that too. So if you really want to get down to that next level of evaluation, we haven't even included the road, the maintenance, the damage does to our roads. That damage is too strong of a word, but wear and tear on the roads, sure. The carbon that's being emitted by trucks, the noise. I mean, there's all of that environmental impact. Environmental impact has not been included in this, but we just think it's kind of apparent. We haven't said this many pounds of CO2 per year, but it's pretty easy to say that if there's no semis on our roads, it's going to be less wear and tear on our roads, better for the environment, better for noise.
Right. Thinking of, consulting firm put this together. I assume that there's been other reports put together by consulting firms. How often or when has the city gone against obvious recommendations?
I don't know, Scott. I would say not often.
Yeah, not often.
I just think with this one, I just had a gut feeling because we've been really looking at this hard for a couple of years. I just, and I think I feel a little better today than I did a year ago because we got into West Central Biosolids with our neighbors, right? Hudson and Richmond and other neighbors. We said we're going with this together. Well, I was just wondering if there's any political fallout from leaving people, I don't want to say high and dry, but their costs are going up if we get out. We're almost 20% of that West Central. And I don't know about the policymakers if there's relationships or things I'm not aware of that stepping on toes or something we're waiting for that this would throw a wrench in. I don't know. So there's the numbers, Kellen. This is pretty obvious.
But
are there other factors?
Yeah, but at the same time, I remember the discussion on this, and I remember you standing over there, and Ron came up and spoke, and he was pretty much in favor of alternative one. Dean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I mean,
Ron, before he left, was strongly in favor of alternative one.
Yeah,
and I think if you want a truth detector, how can I not be? I mean,
well, I understand, being kind with our neighbors, but at the same time, it was also made abundantly clear that they didn't pay attention and they didn't go through everything, and they just were like, yep, we'll just do this, right?
They did that, and so much so that last year they were like, what happened? Right? What, did we sign that? They said, we didn't sign up, and we're like, yeah, you did.
So just a little inside baseball. Kevin and I and Ron were at a meeting up in Baldwin, and there was a bunch of other elected officials there, and other municipalities were represented, and I know a couple of the I know many more members of the Hudson Council and the mayor, but I know a couple of members from the New Richmond Council, and we started talking about it afterwards, and the New Richmond member said, well, maybe we don't sign the letter, and I said, you already did, and he was unaware of that. And he goes, what? Who signed it? I was like, I don't know. Somebody on your staff signed it. So you're committed. You don't,
It's kind of tough to go back now that they've committed to a contract.
So he was a little, and I'm certainly not casting aspersions on the other staffs, but they may have looked at this and may not have had the same, number one, foresight, or number two, just resources and capacity to go in and take a look at this and say, could we do this? Can we look at this? Is this something we can come at? So they may have just said, well, our answer's clear because of the position we're in, and they signed it and moved on to the next task.
Yeah. Maybe I can even answer Kellen's question a little better, but that's great background. This is a huge decision, right? And I don't want to make a bad decision. And if like I said, we've been analyzing this for a couple of years and we keep coming up with the same decision. We've made the numbers as good as we can to stay with West Central. I mean, we're erring on the side of making it look as good as we can to stay. So there's room there too. Then lastly, we're going to go over this one more time before March 8th. Josh and I are going to sit down and we're going to go over the numbers one more time. We had Ryan Yentz in here, the consultant that gave us some numbers. He sat down with myself and Scott and Jason Stroud and I and looked us in the eye. We were probing questions. Are those numbers right? Do you feel comfortable with 7.2 million? What are we missing? So I just want to make sure that we don't let the horse out of the barn and then go, oh, we forgot about that, or we didn't think about this. So we are going over it with a fine-tooth comb as best we can to make sure that when we come to the joint workshop on the 8th of March, we can say, I think we're going to move this direction unless we hear differently, which I think you can sense where I'm kind of coming from.
Yeah. And Kellen, just to answer your question about have we ever had something presented to us by a consultant and had us make a different decision? You know, a lot of the major decisions we've made in the city have been either let out for RFP. I'm thinking of the current comp plan, bike ped, and park plan. That was let out, and I think we had 12 RFPs that came back, and we did interviews with the top 3 or 4 finishers, and so we've kind of vetted those out that way, so we didn't get to that. Now, Trilogy was a different deal. I can't remember if we did this in an
We
RFP.
used Trilogy because we used Trilogy to do our water rate case about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And they were familiar with our system and our capital improvements. And we
Okay.
were really happy with the work they did.
Yeah.
And this work here is not that expensive, to be honest with you. It's
And I think the other
under $10,000.
question I've got is, I think there's a lot more people that will do a comp plan and some other plans, but I think the scope is a little limited when we start looking for consultants for wastewater treatment plants. I'm assuming. I'm sure they're out there, but
And Trilogy's an expert. You can say their name in the circles and people are like, oh yeah, they do
Yeah.
nice work.
curious.
So this is what they do.
Yeah, I think my question was more to the point where when the findings are like that obvious
Yeah.
from a consulting company,
I'm just-
how often have we gone against the
Uh,
obvious, I guess?
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
I'm just being shy and just maybe I'm not trying to be coy or anything. I just don't want to come out and just be like, yeah, let's do it. I just think you can see where I'm leaning, and I think that we just need to check it one more time. So, because I don't want to get too far out in front of my skis, to use the saying, but
What does
I'm
our,
seeing what you're saying, and it's pretty obvious.
well, what does our wastewater staff also think?
Well, Ron Groth, when he left, you knew exactly what he thought, and Dean is
but-
here now. Oh, they think they can do it. I mean, there's an ego thing in this too, right? Like, why would we let someone else do it? We can do this. I'll give you an example. So I was going to bring it up later, but I'll bring it up now. Just like, what do they think of it? Of course, we've got can-do people. So Bill Swenson, 2 weeks ago, we had to fix a motor. It was going to be like 10 grand. He's like, I'll find some parts. So he goes around the wastewater treatment plant for a couple of days, finds everything he needs and fixes it himself and saves $10,000 because he can do it better than spend the money. I mean, these people are bought in. They know what's going on. They think they can do it better. They know they can do it better and more efficiently, better for the community. I know that's what they think. Dean, am I speaking out of turn? So, you know, that's it, part of that's ego, right? I think we can do it better than they can. Yeah, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I do know we have people who care a lot, who are good at what they do. I do know that.
Bill's got a good farm work ethic.
There's a lot of that. Why would you spend that money? I saw that old piece over there. So that's kind of where we're at. And I thought too, it was better to get this out here now in a public meeting. It'll be on tape. Hopefully the council might even go back and watch it ahead of time. So when you get to March 8th, you've thought about this. There's questions you're going to think of between now and then that might be really good, and forward them, ask them. I don't even think it would have been fair to give this to you that night, because it would have left going, I want to think about this a little bit. Well, we've been thinking about it a long time. This is one more precursor to what's coming. You're going to see this again delivered by the pro. Does that help?
Kevin,
Yeah.
just a question on alternative two. So the West Central capital upgrades are estimated at 29 million. I think a little over a year ago, and we had a presentation on this, I have written down that they had it estimated 23.5.
Correct.
So that's went up quite a bit. Is that just because of more detailed engineering that has been done to hone in on that estimate, or are they just, well, I mean,
Yes.
I don't think they're guessing, but
They're not guessing. One was inflation, one was the time, and then I think they just got a little sharper with their pencil.
okay.
Because when they came to the November meeting, they gave the new numbers, and they said it's about 5 or 6 million higher than we told you 8 months ago.
And then it lists $390,000 increase in operation and maintenance associated with the upgrade. Is that total for the facility, or is that River Falls' share? The 390,
Oh, I think that's total. It's not divided up.
okay.
Yeah.
Because
I was reading some of that today too. A lot of that is total, and you got to back out your 20% on that. I'm not sure exactly what line you're looking at, but some of those bigger numbers like that, it's facility cost.
yeah, it just seemed like when we looked at this previously, I had a question. It just seemed like the O&M was going to go up for the whole facility, which then, of course, our percentage goes up. It was going to be like double what it is now.
Mhm.
And I know part of that is transportation too, but,
Mhm.
and it just, at the time, it just seemed like I couldn't understand why a new facility would cost twice as much to operate. But, so I'm still trying to get my hands around that. If that's a significant additional cost for them, their predicted O&M increase, or is it not so significant? I mean, $400,000 for the entire facility probably isn't that big of a deal, but
Right. On a $30 million facility.
yeah. So anyway,
Yeah. So then one other thing, Kellen, is I got this little bottle sitting here. I was thinking, what other things that now don't worry me, but I think that which community needs to feel comfortable with is odor, right? As soon as you say you're drying end product, what's it going to smell like? Well, we've been around, and there's other facilities who have this product, and we've got some in a jar, and Adam, you can pass it around. It smells kind of earthy, but it doesn't really have that, when we put this outside for either a contractor to take or,
I'm good.
yeah, it doesn't really, it smells like dirt. It just smells like dirt is all it smells like. But, that's the thing, right? You're going to put this out, and if the wind blows the wrong way, or is it going to stink out the neighborhoods?
But wasn't this also what wasn't that similar to a facility in the Dells?
Yes.
That Ron was talking about.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. That it doesn't have an odor, really. It smells like dirt, pile of dirt, so.
And not another factor not brought into the calculation, and it probably is way too premature, but Milwaukee has found a way to make money off of this by selling it as Milorganite. Is that right?
Yes, that's accurate.
So there's a revenue source here if somebody wants to retail this stuff.
Yeah, you could. The problem is I don't think it's enough. It's the problem. You're going to get like a dump truck full a week.
Yeah.
So, do you invest in bagging, that limited amount, or do you have a contract with a landscape person who comes and takes it for $50 a week, whatever, or put it out in front for people to put it in their garden or lawn.
Yeah.
So
Kevin,
that's
Kevin, what's our current outstanding debt to operating revenue, right? You said it, alternative number one might push us closer to 4.
Yeah.
What's our current?
Do you know the answer to that?
No,
Our finance director's looking him go through his papers on that.
I don't. I'm sorry.
No, but Adam, we'll get you an answer on that, Adam. What we're at.
And then my next, it's more of a comment and just kind of a fact check. It seems like alternative 2 commits us to 20 years of variable cost increases.
Mhm.
Alternative number 1 at least puts us in a position to control our own costs over the long term and provide that savings back to our users, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then one could argue too, 20 years is done, we're paid off. Of course, you'll have replacement costs and maintenance costs, but at that 20-year mark, if the equipment's still operational and working, you could really then kick in the savings at that point. But there'll be, you're going to save money to replace and maintenance. But
Kevin, is the facility, the $7.2 million facility, is that factoring in growth of the community and
Yes.
different things like that? So we're not coming back in like 10 years and saying we need to expand.
we'll ask Ryan Jens again on that, but I think it's the smallest dryer, which is about double the capacity we need. So, yes.
Can we use any of that additional capacity with other municipalities to dry there?
That's a good question, because we talked about that as well, Adam. Right now, if West Central Biosolids goes down or the trucks aren't going to run, there is no backup plan for us. We're kind of on the edge a little bit. I mean, we've managed so far with them for 20 years, but if something bad happens or the truckers call up and go, we're not picking up, you're on your own, we have to scramble to figure out what we're going to do. If we have our facility up and operational, to your point, maybe we could backfill for some communities in a pinch. So there's that. Maybe. Anything else? There's your precursor, so a little warm up in the bullpen for the next meeting.
See, Kevin, this
Yeah.
is Mark.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mark and I were trying to say some things, but I don't know, Mark, can we hear you right now? No.
No, I can't hear Mark.
Hear you, Mark. No,
I can't hear Mark Westpatal. I cannot.
I cannot read lips either.
I think he's muted. Mark
Yeah.
Westpatal, we could hear you earlier, but I can't hear you now.
No.
And I'm not good enough lip reader.
No. No. So I just have a point, Kevin. And, we've been dealing with these hydros for a few years now. And I just want everybody to be thinking that it's sometimes not all just about the money. Because we know that the stakeholders that came to the table, they weren't concerned about money, and they still aren't. So, I'm not always the type that just says, "Oh, it's all about the money. We're going to save a few dollars." We listened to Ron, and I asked Ron the specific question about how long is this facility going to last, and he honestly couldn't give us an answer. We talked about the Milorganite that Scott brought up. And, I asked him, I said, are we going to generate enough of this where we could sell it? We could make some money. And no, we're not.
Right.
We asked the question, can we bring in other municipalities? Can we bring in others? And that's always a possibility, but now you're putting wear and tear on our equipment. So I don't know. In the back of my mind, that's, and I think it's in yours as well, Kevin, in everybody's that haunting of, are we doing our neighbors a service here by bailing out on them, actually? So, and then one other point I wanted to make is that I'm glad Kellen rephrased his comment. And I read through Trilogy's report a couple times, and I see nothing in there about them suggesting one alternative over the other. They simply are just giving the facts. So
Except in their conclusion, maybe.
I didn't see it in there either.
Yeah.
Unless I'm
because
reading
the
it wrong.
consultant is trying very hard to be as neutral as possible and just give you facts. And
Right.
They don't want to be married to one of the outcomes in case it doesn't go good.
Right.
So they just want to give you the facts, man.
Right.
So Mark, those comments are great, and that maybe encompasses what I'm thinking, because I do think the numbers make sense. And I'm asking, are there other things that would influence policymakers? And this is why groups of smart people make good decisions, because we can all discuss and come up hopefully with a good answer to this.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, great. So my comment would be is, again, maybe following up with what Mark said, is I'm worried about the ultimate disposal of this. There's site conditions that have to be met. They have to have willing landowners who have those site conditions. They have to have neighbors who are willing to put up with this black stuff going on their neighbor's yard. There's truck traffic involved. I'm just worried about, yeah, the numbers may look one way, but can we actually do the final disposal without having a lot of backlash from neighbors or anybody who's willing to take it, who have the correct soil and site and slope and setback conditions that you need in order to spread this?
That's
So
why I brought
my-
that up. Those
my
are great
thought.
points. Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about that. We're looking at other communities and what they do. I think internally, we do feel comfortable, even the city itself with the parks and the open spaces. You know, worst case, we have enough acreage, we could be spreading that ourselves. We have a partner in the university who has a lot of agriculture land, so there might be potential there. There are commercial landscape companies. So we feel comfortable just through what others are doing with this product that we could get rid of a truckload a week. But your concerns are real concerns and ones that we would have to address.
And to me, another thing would be the balance between going Class A pathogen reduction versus Class B, and then saving the money on all the capital costs of O&M to go to Class A, and finding a willing landowner with a good site that can accept the Class B sludge versus Class A. Has that been talked about at all as far
Yeah, a
as?
little bit. I think the regulation around Class B and where you can deliver it and whatnot and where you can spread it is not as kind to as Class A sludge. And the difference to get to Class A versus Class B, the cost difference isn't enough to outweigh the potential problems of spreading Class B.
Okay.
So we've talked about that too a little bit. It's just nice to have the Class A product that can go anywhere without odor. The Class B, you can't spread it certain times of the year, certain locations, multiple times in a certain time frame. So there's other issues that come with Class B. Storage, odor.
Kevin, the West Central project would bring theirs up to Class A, would it not?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're talking
We're
Class
both going to
A.
go
both.
Class A, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're talking new dryers. Probably not centrifuge, but drying. So, I don't know. You folks are asking all the right questions. And this is why I bring it up now, because we're going to be really, really prepared for March 8th and have a great discussion. And I can't wait for Josh and I to sit down for a few more hours and go over the numbers, just to make sure. Anything else? Thanks for your patience on that. It's a big subject. It's a legacy decision for our community, so we want to get it right. Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next light topic. Sorry. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Dam Grant Application and Decommissioning Activities Update Report.
Yeah, I'll go real quick on that. Anybody recognize this here? This is a look down at the wing wall that was damaged. So our electric line crews are out there last week, and they sandbagged and put some gravel in, and they cement blocks in. This was a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requirement is one of the things we had to do. They got that done last week. So let me just back up just a little bit. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, gave us an order about 2 weeks ago. It was early February, and it said, we are going to acquiesce, and we're going to let Powell Falls go from your license, and we're going to turn it over to the DNR. But you have to do these 4 or 5 things in order to make that happen. And one of the things was finish this wing wall, which we did. Remove the turbine from the hole. We hired a company, Brennan out of La Crosse, who specializes in these things. They pulled the turbine up. They put it up in the top of the powerhouse is sitting on the floor in there. Clean the trash rack, which is 81% cleaned off, and the remainder is frozen and we can't get it out of there. So we'll be getting that out soon. And the third thing was to make sure that the sluice gate operates up and down, which it does. So we're actually going to be sending our engineer who's out here today, taking pictures, writing documentations, verifying. We're going to send that back to FERC tomorrow morning. I've been talking to FERC 2 or 3 times a week, Scott Aredo in the Chicago office. He's ready for us. He says, I'm going to get your letter out to release this fully as soon as we get confirmation from your engineer and we're satisfied with what you did. So hopefully by the end of this week, we're going to get confirmation from FERC that FERC is no longer involved in Powell Falls Dam. That is good news because March 4th, Our DNR dam grant is due. And one of the caveats in order for them to accept our dam grant is this can no longer be a FERC dam. And we thought, how in the heck are we going to get all this stuff done? This was like on February the 5th or something. We got this notice from FERC. We had a long list of stuff that we needed to do, heavy work, like you can see here. And our crews have done unbelievable things in the last 2 weeks. Lene is up till 9:30 at night, gathering stuff, putting stuff together, getting it to Peter Hogg, our engineer. We're going to get this thing released from FERC. We're going to get our dam grant in on time. And to go with the dam grant, we also have our 65% done permit for removal of this thing as part of the dam grant, all done in about 3 weeks. So hats off to our crews and Lene and our staff for getting this done. It's not there yet, but it should be done.
Kevin, just curiosity, how did we get a crane down there to get that thing out?
So there's a road, I don't have it in front of me, but
The road from Glen Park or that?
no, the other side. So when these guys had to bring a skid steer down here to put these, you can see the little notches on top of these blocks. So you kind of come through the wastewater treatment plant. They opened up a big section of gate there at the back of the plant. And then there's a little bit of they went about 50 yards and a little bit of a road that drives right on down into the lake right there. And that's where the causeway will go.
And that's how the crane got over to get the
No,
wellhead out?
excuse me. Okay, so you were talking about.
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify.
Yes, no, there wasn't a crane for that. They got out of like a tripod and they hoisted it out of there. So they have it. So they build set a tripod up over the hole, get the thing down, they winch it up onto there.
God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they did it like in 2 days. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. So
George
it's-
Strawn had to ratchet that thing
You're
up.
right, and it's sitting. It's not disassembled, but it's up out of the hole.
Okay.
So that's it. And the reason for that is so if you get a big rainstorm, now the water can flow through the trash rack, through where the turbine was, and then back it down into the river.
Yeah.
So we can increase our capacity by about 60% more.
So are they going to give us a escrow agreement that says you're still going to get the trash rack clean because we can't, short
Well,
of
that's the
starting
thing,
it on
Miles.
fire, we're not going to get it on.
So that's what we're writing in the thing to FERC is it's 81% clean. We're comfortable that enough water can still flow according to Peter Hogg's engineering work, and that we'll have it done by April 15th or whenever we have a date.
Okay.
So hopefully they're going to sign off on that.
Okay.
Worst case they don't, and I don't know what we do, but I think they will.
Can of
In our
gas and a match.
What's that?
Can of gas and a match.
Yeah, it's dynamite. I don't know where to get. So.
Can
Kevin,
the turbine that we
Mark
pulled
here.
out, can there be parts taken off that and used for the other one?
I don't know about
Same.
that. I don't know about that for sure. But one of the things to was like save it for a museum or something. I don't know. So, but it's not disassembled, so it's still. I thought they were gonna have to break it apart to get it out of there, and I thought it would be destroyed, and we were almost ready just to go down that road, but they got it out without destroying it. So, it's not that big. You think it's huge? It's 4 feet around, maybe. That's not that big. I mean, it's big, but it's not like 10 foot. It's not as big as this area. That was my first vision. Like, oh my God, this thing is 10 feet in diameter, but it's not that big. So some amazing work. And this Powell Fall might be turned over to the DNR. Hopefully, we can get our $1 million dam grant by mid-year. Probably finish our work on engineering, get it out to bid, and I would guess if that all came together, Powell Falls would probably be out in 23. We got the money in mid-22, got to finish the design, bidding. There's a potential that Powell Falls could be out by mid-23 if all of this came together that I'm mentioning.
Yep.
So,
How much philanthropic giving has been happening?
the KCC did help with so dollar-wise nothing, but the KCC did help with the dam grant application.
Thanks.
So that's
Kevin,
the
I have
dam
a question.
update.
Kevin, can you hear me?
DAM update.
Kellen, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I have
Mark.
couple quick questions for Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. So I remember if we took the hydro out and we cleaned the trash rack, that we were going to double our water capacity.
Yep, it's like
I think I just heard
60%.
you say 60%.
I heard that today from Pete when he was in my office because I had Mark, if you're like a fly on my wall, I said, does that double our capacity? He says, like, it's 60% more capacity through the opening.
Okay. Because I remember the initial discussions where we would double. So if we had a 6 foot by 6 foot opening. So
I
now
think
we
the other
only-
opening's a little bit smaller, he said.
Okay. So what does Peter say, and what does the DNR say about the bounce? What are they,
About the what?
the bounce?
Oh, yeah.
In case we get a 4-inch rainfall, what is the DNR now going to say to us?
They said if the lake bounces, if it goes, and it would take probably a 5 or 6 inch rain. So we had a 4.5 inch rain last year over 12 hours. It did not bounce. It got up to the top of the 6 by 6 opening. So if it does bounce, they're going to want us to shut the gates a little bit and then release water slowly. So that's what they would want us to do, is to control. If it bounces, they would want us to control the output then once it bounced. But having 60% more, if we were good through a 4.5 inch rain, I think we'd probably handle a 6 inch rain now. Just my gut from what I saw from last year. Because it did not bounce one time last year.
Yep. Okay.
So I would say we're probably good up to half inch of rain. But again, if it's in an hour, that's different.
Is the DNR going to come with some more regulations on us once they have ownership of it? I mean, you've had those discussions already?
We have had some of those discussions, and we've given them our decommissioning plan so they know what our plan is. Will they change the plan and require more? I don't know. We have our sediment strategy, which is minimalistic. It's bank shaping. It's doing some armoring around the sewer pipe, which is riprap, basically. But it's pretty minimalistic, what we have planned for sediment removal. I don't know if there's other people sitting quietly in the weeds waiting to pounce on that. I hope not. But we have our plan submitted, so the DNR knows exactly what we're intending to do. Remove the dam, restoration light, basically, is what I would call it. That's what our plan is, and we have a budget on that of moving forward. We just did it the other day. We have about, if we were rounding up, around $1.7 million left with contingencies. Josh, is that roughly right? Yeah. So you'd have $1 million grant, you'd have $700,000 left.
So
that's according to our budget for our plan.
Is there a plan now of what it looks like and how the dam is going to be removed and what that is going to look like when it's all done?
No.
Because I've never seen that.
No. No, I asked Pete today too. I said, does the river move over a little bit? He said, I don't know. So I don't know how far that, the river goes down where the 6 by 6 opening is now. I said, does it move over a little bit? He says, it might work that way, but he wasn't sure.
So how can we say that the dam is coming out 2023 then? It's
Yeah.
not computing for me.
So how can we say it's coming out in 23? We have a plan. So I don't know. Well, we have a decommissioning plan. We have engineering drawings that are in the permit that are about 65% done of how to dismantle the dam in different stages. So there is bank shaping in the plan. So I don't have a rendering of what it's going to look like though, Mark. I'll make it like, what's it going to, other than the banks will be shaped back, what segments of the banks are going to be shaped back, where in those, there's a couple reinforcements and a couple of the sharp bends. So when you say what it's going to look like, if you're thinking a picture, I don't have a picture, but I've got engineering drawings of what it's going to look like.
Okay, so we know exactly what it's going to look like right where the dam is right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And how much sediment's coming, how much sediment we plan on taking out of there, and where we plan on reinforcing the walls, and where we plan on shaping the walls. And I can tell you right now, again, when Pete was in my office today, the sediment removal along there is fairly minimalistic.
Thank you.
It's not going. How about this, Mark? It's not going to look a ton different than it does now. Minimally. Does that help? I mean, that's my best description I can give. Is it going to be way different? No. It's going to be a little bit different, yeah, but not like crazy different. So that's the update on where we're at with dams and grants.
For our next report, the finance report.
Josh Solinger, new finance director. If you haven't met Josh, Josh Solinger, new finance director. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. And thank you, members of the board. So these are the preliminary, and I want to emphasize preliminary because we're still going through audit that will continue through March. Year-end results for fiscal year 2021. And I do just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge Tracy Biederman. She's our accounting manager who prepared the memo and the financial figures that kind of underpin this presentation. Her material are in your packet. So for the electric fund, fiscal year 2021 results, we had revenues of $15.34 million, expenses of $14.86 million, and an increase in cash and investments in the fund year over year. The electric utility sold 5.7 million kilowatt hours more of electricity in 2021 compared to 2020, which played a large role in the increase in cash and investments that you see from 2020 to 2021. There was an increase in purchased power and distribution costs in 21 compared to 2020, which just kind of naturally follow when you're selling more electricity. So then the information for this and the other utilities, they're in the last 2 pages of Tracy's memo that are in your packet. There's kind of some graphical representations of the numbers that I'm going over. For the water fund, fiscal year 2021 results, we had revenues of $2.34 million, expenses of $1.93 million, and again, we had an increase in cash and investments in that fund. Delivery sales were up 46.4 million gallons in 2021 compared to 2020. For the sewer fund, revenues were $3.65 million, expenses were $2.94 million, so again, increase in cash and investments. Expenses in the sewer fund were down and significantly below budget for 2021 because no sewer lining was performed last year. And lastly, our stormwater fund. Fiscal year 2021, we had revenues of $586,000. Expenses were $831,000, so there actually was a decrease in cash and investments for the stormwater fund. In this case, expenses are up and over budget in that fund for the year due to Gulfview Channel, the Gulfview Channel rehab project. So a quick summary of accounts receivable. Accounts receivable total of all of the 4 funds, it totaled $1.962 million as of December 31st, 2021. That's roughly the same amount as it was as of 12/31/2020. There is a difference, however, in the accounts receivable that are 31 or more days past due. That actually decreased $40,452 from December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2021. And then at a high level, and this kind of answers a question earlier about our sewer utility, from a policy compliance perspective, as I mentioned, we do monitor working capital policy and our debt coverage policy. All 4 of the utility funds are compliant for both policies as of the end of 2021. Again, that is preliminary. We do have the audit ongoing, but we expect that to hold true through the end of the audit. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
What contributes to the seasonality of the AR?
Seasonality in the AR. That's a really good question that I'm going to have to get back to you on. You got some good questions. I'm going to write it down and I will get back to you. I'll send an email to Lene and Kevin, unless, Kevin, you have thoughts on seasonality.
Some may have to do with the shut-off moratoriums and when people come in to pay in lumps, I believe, right? Because between November 15th and April 15th, there's no disconnects. So there might be a rush to pay in April to reduce that AR.
Well, I mean, there's certainly seasonality in usage, obviously.
There's that too.
Which may then flow through to the AR, but I can certainly get you a more exact answer.
Yeah, so higher bills in the summer may contribute to it. I think it has to do with maybe the disconnect moratorium and that potential. I'd have to look at it more closely too, but I'm just trying to think, what could it be?
Take a deep dive into our financial system.
Weather and moratoriums is two things that come to mind.
Thank you.
Moving on to the utility dashboards.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I think Josh pretty much covered our usage and our trends, so I leave them where they're at, where it's in your packet. No need to belabor that.
And any monthly utility report.
Yeah, just one thing I found interesting on the utility report from our customer service team. The new self-service online customer tool, My Account, we have 3,361 new accounts set up since the inception of that. That's half of our customers that are on My Account. I think that's pretty good. So I thought it was 96 new accounts established in January. So I just thought that's a good number to point out that they're doing a great job. They're doing the ask. They're showing people how to get to My Account, answering a lot of questions. So our front customer service staff does a great job with that, and I wanted to point that out. Also, let me see. Yeah, I think maybe it's getting to announcements, but I just want to also say that part of we're going to be going out to bid here very shortly for our north water tower. That will be just up on Sterling Ponds Corporate Park. And one of our last check boxes we had to do for the DNR, they asked us to do a bald eagle survey, and that you can't have any bald eagles nests within 600 yards. Yeah, 600 yards of the site. And we were going to be charged $3,500 to do a bald eagle survey from our consultant, and we said that's kind of high. Turns out David Paynada, who is one of our new water operators, did that in his previous career. So we're going to get David Paynada, one of our water operators, to go do the bald eagle survey just as part of his daily duties. Saved us $3,500. So
An extra day of vacation.
maybe something like that would take him out to lunch.
I believe David was on my track team as well.
Good.
He probably didn't mention it maybe during his interview process.
He said, "I don't know Kellen." No.
So at one point, you can ask him. David was actually the fastest man in Wisconsin.
Really?
Yep, he's attended the national championships. We got a big picture of him, so now you can rib him about that. So
we should have that bald eagle survey done by 10 a.m.
Yep, he can run up there real fast.
Now Dean can speak to it better than I can, but we seem to be real happy to have him on board as part of our city staff.
Yep.
So
I did know he was the fastest because his roommate Tim works with us too.
Tim Rixman is
Yep.
So runners. Anyway, I just think that's kind of a fun story. David says, "I'll do that. I can do that. That's what I did before I worked here." So he's going to do the bald eagle survey, and we'll submit that and save us some money. So, geez, between David and Bill Swenson saving us all that money, put up a bigger dryer.
There you go.
So that's what I have for tonight.
Any other announcements?
Yeah, one more. Electronics recycling. Electronics recycling, April 23rd, Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That one gets a real long line because it's just one day, 9 a.m. to 1. Electronic recycling at the Public Works Garage. Customers are limited to one trip at the event. So let's honor that, please. It doesn't mean if a family of 5 is not 5 trips. It's just one trip is what we're asking. Because that can get out of control. We're pretty generous with that, and we've had a couple of those events where really it got to be too, I don't know if you can get too much, but it didn't meet the spirit of what we were trying to do. We're trying to help families get rid of monitors and keyboards at home. We're not looking for someone to bring 2 pickup trucks full of stuff from the business they just sold. So the spirit of this is to help people unload some electronics, not semi-trailers full. Spirit of the event.
And Kevin, I would assume, is this the event where we would, I'm sure more details will
Yes.
come, but this is the one that's going to come in off of Quarry Road rather than off of Main.
Correct, because it gets long. Yes, that's the one we'll do that, yes.
Yep.
What's that? Oh, free cycle. What's that?
So if you have.
Talking to your mic.
So Free Cycle this year is going to be a spot if you've got something that's still usable but you don't want to use it. Mike Marine will be there and he will let you put it in the spot. And if you want to come and grab something that looks good to you, you can take it. But that'll be out too when it's posted in March.
You're gonna have 75 treadmills out there.
Oh, yeah. It's,
Some of them might be mine.
it still works.
Be careful when you touch these two wires. It works.
That baby's there after dark.
Yeah.
Also known as clothes dryers for some.
Speaking of spirit of things, I think the spirit of that is right. That'll be interesting how that works out.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We may lose the gainings we've got from Bill and David.
How come that pile's bigger than the other pile? Because it probably all still works.
Yeah.
I just want to say, because I totally neglected this at the start, I just want to welcome Adam to the board as well. So happy to have you here joining in the fun.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Welcome, Adam.
Any other announcements? Lively banter. Looking for a motion to adjourn then?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.